Does every NEBOSH question require the P technique? Well, short answer is no, they don't all require that. But every question does require you to demonstrate your understanding. And so we can still use some, at least, of the principles of the P technique when answering all of our questions to absolutely nail our mark. Let's take a look at NEBOSH's guidance on this. So they've got the P technique here, and they say it's one of the techniques, and so there are other ways of answering questions, and it can be used for certain types of questions, and it is a way of explaining what we call the so what. It's a way which logically connects the point with the evidence. And I still recommend that you try to do that wherever possible. Now, strictly speaking, some questions do not require that. Let's take a look at an example here. It says, this is from the NEBOSH guidance again. This is a fairly common question. It's what are the financial arguments that you could use? And it says the question is looking for brief technical health and safety points such as sick pay, investigation costs and fines. Now, if you read that, it might give you a misleading impression that you can just list fines, sick pay, investigation costs, overtime, temporary workers, damage to reputation. If you do that, that's not going to get any marks, because what it also says, there's what we call a stem here. It says, note, you should support your answer where applicable using relevant information from the scenario. So you're going to give brief technical points, but you are still going to use evidence. So that's at least the first two parts of the P principle, isn't it? It's like, there's the point, sick pay, and then use the evidence from the scenario to demonstrate how sick pay might be a problem here. So you could say, well, there's been a history of people slipping on the floor, and that's led to sickness absence, and we have to keep paying people sick pay so that they sit at home doing nothing. And that's a cost of the business. And so what we're doing there, we're trying to answer that question. What financial arguments could you use to convince the manager that accidents are expensive for the organization? Remember to try and get that across in your P principle. So you are explaining why that's expensive for the organization. There are lots of accidents in the scenario. Each one's leading to some absence. And this is all adding up, and it's becoming way more expensive than just keeping the floor tidy or stopping the slips in the first place. So you see, you make your point, which could be sick pay, use evidence in the scenario to show that sick pay is probably higher than it should be, and then explain why that is expensive. Using the P principle for every question is usually very, very useful. Sorry to interrupt this useful and valuable video. If you're struggling with your National General Certificate, if your course provider is not helpful, if you failed your assessments, NG1, NG2, if your course is expired and you can't get any more help, anything like that, please take a look at our rescue package. The link is in the description below. Heavily discounted access to our e-learning course with my tutor support and all of my assistants. Check it out, the link's below. Now, there are some questions where the P principle just doesn't seem to really work at all. So let's look at this example here where we've got a risk matrix right there. And here it says, assuming that you are teaching someone who has never seen this kind of risk matrix before, show how the matrix can be used to confirm that the risk level was not acceptable with the existing kitchen flooring. Show your calculations and support the calculations where applicable using information from the scenario. So again, we've got the evidence there. So information from the scenario, that's your evidence. But first you're going to come up with a list of points. There are 5 marks for this question. So assuming you are teaching someone who's never done this before, you're going to give them a step-by-step explanation. Well, first there's this, and then there's that, and then there's that, and then there's that, and so on. You're going to have to write a list of points you're going to make which shows that the risk level was not acceptable with the existing kitchen flooring. And so here's one that I've prepared earlier.
Here's one I made earlier.
I've written a list of points, things that I would explain to someone who's never seen this before. I'm going to explain to them that we're trying to score likelihood and severity, and we multiply the two, and that gives us a risk level. So that's 1 point. And in this case, the likelihood would be very likely because I've read through my scenario and I think it will be very likely that someone could get hurt. My next point is the injury that occurred was a minor injury. I could say, well, they slipped and they just bruised their leg. That was a minor injury. But the thing I would then explain is that we don't score the severity on the actual injuries or what's actually happening or what's happened previously. We score the severity based on the worst reasonable situation. And the worst reasonable situation for this type of slip accident could be a major injury. So that's point number 5 there. And then I'm going to close it off by saying, so I think the rating would be high because it would be very likely, which is a 3 multiplied by a major injury, which is another 3. That gives us a 9, and the 9 is in the red box there.
This guy is good.
Those are my points. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some evidence for each. Now the thing is, not all of these points require evidence because this is a theoretical point there, and there isn't really any evidence for me to use from the scenario. But there is evidence from this. I could say, I'll just put a colon there and say, the fast food cafe has seen numerous slip accidents in recent history. Employees have said it is only a matter of time until someone gets badly hurt in a slip. All right, there we are. So that's a bit of evidence. The injury that occurred was a minor injury. I'm going to add some evidence there. I'm going to say the employee who said recently received a bruise to their leg. This did not require any sickness absence or medical treatment. So it would be the lowest level of severity. So you see, I'm adding evidence from the scenario just as before. Now, I'm not going to do that for all of them right now. Hopefully you get the point. The next part of the P principle would then be to add a bit of explanation to explain to someone, to remember the question, just go back to the question, assume you are teaching someone who's never seen this kind of risk matrix before. So just assume that your examiner is a complete newbie. Assume you are the NEBOSH tutor and your examiner is the learner, right? What would you say to get this across? So the theory is, we score or estimate the level of likelihood from from very likely to very likely, so from very unlikely to very likely, and give these numbers from 1 to 3. Higher the number, higher likelihood. We do the same for severity from, from minor to major, from minor injury to major injury. The higher the number, the higher the severity. We then multiply the two to get a risk rating. Higher numbers will be higher risks. Low numbers will be low risks. Now, while typing this, I've actually realized that there's another point I could make, and I could actually refer to the colors and the fact that we've got risk ratings from low, medium, and high. So I'm just going to add that as a point. So risk rating levels, I'm going to say risks of, So 1 and 2. 1 and 2, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, 1 and 2. Risks of 1 and 2 would be low and require no further action. Risks of 3 and 4, is it 3 and 4? 3 and 4? Yes, I think it is, yeah, 3 and 4. Risk of 3 and 4 would be medium and would require some improvements. Risks of, is it 5 and 6? 5 and 6? No, 5 and 9. We've got 2 times 3 is 5 and 9. 5 and 9 would be high, and what was the question again? The question said non-acceptable. Risk level was not acceptable. Risks of 5 and 9 would be high, and these are unacceptable and must be reduced so far as is reasonably practicable. So that's given me now 7 points on my, so I only need 5, but I've now got 7 points, and I've added an explanation there. I've got no evidence, but that's an explanation. I'm going to add in some explanation on this one here. So I've got my point, I've got my evidence. Now I'm going to add in my explanation. So it would be very likely, numerous slip accidents, matter of time. Why does that mean? So this is the question. Why does that mean it's very likely? If accidents have been happening frequently in the past, then it is logical to assume that accidents will are very likely to reoccur without further action. There we go. Now we've got another point. And you're going to do the same thing with the severity as well. So there was a minor injury, didn't require. It's the lowest levels of severity. You could say the second level of severity is a first aid injury, which is not what occurred on this occasion. But, there's a big but here, and I would actually add in a but there. I would say, but the severity is based on what's reasonable case scenario, not on what happened previously. We must not assume that every incident will be so minor. It is only a matter of luck. I can't spell matter in this, can I? Clearly, I've done that twice now. A matter of luck whether someone receives a major injury. The floor tiles are ceramic. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that to the next one. It's reasonably mean a major injury. The floor tiles are ceramic. That's actually evidence. This isn't even an explanation. The floor tiles are ceramic and very hard. If someone hit their head on these, this could lead to a serious head injury such as a skull fracture, and could even be fatal. So this must be the highest level of potential severity. And so on. I'm not going to answer that point at the end. I'll leave that up to you to figure out what you think we should add there. But we do occasionally get questions where you have to do a step-by-step type of process. And I would just use the P principle for those as well. Write your shopping list of points in like a bullet pointed format, leaving a bit of room. Add in some evidence for each point where applicable, because that's what it says. It says, where applicable, use the evidence. And then add a bit of a further explanation, explaining what you're doing and why all that matters. So there we are. That's how we use the P principle for other questions which might not actually need the P principle.